Okay, we're so happy that you're with us, and we are not sure exactly how long these interviews are going to be, so this one only lasted until 6, which is fine. And now it's going to be me and her. So if you have questions, then we are going to be happy to share and to answer. Everybody does things different. I said to Spirit, okay, so you want me to do interviews? That's great. This is actually going to help me understand the niche of who I am. Because on my webpage today, I had to put up, okay, so who am I? So I understand that I'm going to be carving and finding out more about who I am. How am I going to be able to describe it in a few, like what do they call it, the 30-second...
the elevator speech.
The elevator speech, yes. And so I get that, and we are getting to that point. Now I got several people that are getting ready to be lined up that would love to be able to do interviews with us, and so I'm excited. So we had work for the last few days, just, you know,
getting that process together of the screening, and then the process of gathering the information to
the applications,
get the guests. The
application, we just thought, hey, we'll just call people. I mean, you know, I've been called several times and I've never had to do any paperwork, but yet I called by Spirit that we're supposed to get the paperwork done. I mean, there's an application to get the application, which is hilarious, but I totally understand that. Are you going to fit for our program? Which one? What do you want to talk about? And to get the more details.
And to have a variety of guests on our show is important, because there's so much to who we are, what we do, and defining us as medicine women. I've been on my blogs.
Very good one. You have a nice blog this time too.
Thank you. I'll put that information in the chat room. So I'm discovering more about me. I'm continually doing that, but there's so many different aspects as far as being a minister, being a medicine woman, being a healer, being intuitive. What does psychic mean? What kind of healing do we offer? So there's the guests that are going to be on, and everything that they offer as far as health, wellness, holistic living, and that kind of thing.
You know, and everybody is right, and everybody is in that space, and everybody is a different form of a healing tool. So again, we get to sculpt ourselves. One of our friends on Sepia is Mark is our producer, and then there's a friend named Rusty that does things. Sorry, not being very helpful. I'm watching her do something and throwing me out. But anyway, what happened?
We all do things. We breathe. We wake up each day. We do a living. We write things.
But anyways, they have decided that they're going to be separate from Sepia, but it is a magazine, and it's if we, you know, hopefully Jen can put it up or Mark can give us the names. It's Mysteries and Unexplained. I can't remember the rest of it. Why am I drawing a blank? But what came up was Rusty had put a list of all the things that he would like to see in the magazine. Oh, look at that. That's wonderful. Yes, it's really on the lines of the paranormal, all of the unexplained, all of those mystery, all of those little things. My husband just loves all that stuff. And he says, how would you like to head up maybe writing something about the healing aspect of it? And I thought about it, that on his list it said spirituality. Yes, I'm a spiritual leader. That's my first thing, is that I'm a spiritual leader. I teach people how to look at life, and not only look at it, but give them the healing tools and then empower them and help them break that conscious contact of that they got to create the reality the same way. And then, you know, so then as far as, yes, I'm a healer and I'm a spiritual leader, but I'm also a psychic. I do things differently. So, like today's psychic, she, you know, sounded like the same stuff we do. You get connected up. You can use different avenues of picking up the signature and reading it. You know, one thing I do know is that we zero in more on, because I do listen to the soul, and I listen to it on the wavelength that says, I hear your cries, and being the healer that I am, I go from that one avenue of saying, what do you need to heal first? Because that is the one thing that I know that the soul is very specific on when it came to just healing. And even when I wasn't doing the healing work, the hands-on healing, the homeopathics and things, was simply when in the spiritual nature of it, you do need to have someone to talk to. I mean, we're both ministers, but I don't lead with people letting them know I'm a reverend or a minister, because usually the first reaction is what, Jen?
Oh my gosh! So they said, "Oh my god, yeah, exactly. Everything.
Don't swear! Don't swear!
Yeah, everything. Oh, you're gonna be judging everything that I'm doing. Oh my gosh, I just said that, and and
Oh
it's
my
like,
God, they're gonna
oh
have a bad
come on. If you know anything about me, you would know that that's the least of my worries and what I think about with people. I know that I was called to a certain vocation to minister, to heal. Yes, I'm ordained clergy, so that means that I can baptize and do the sacrament of communion from a Christian perspective.
Same here.
But I'm not limited into this is the only way to get to heaven, and that is my only purpose, is to guide people into this avenue. No. I mean, and the tradition that I come from, every single faith tradition is valuable and leads to the same source.
Oh, exactly. It's all about the states of mind.
Right, and there was a little tweaking as far as the title for Mark. He's a program manager.
Yeah, I was going to point that in there too. Yes, I when I've drawn a blank, and it really draws a blank, so forgive me for that. But anyways, yes, we totally respect Mark and Eric and everybody that has given us this wonderful opportunity to be here.
And it is a great. Well, you were talking about what we do. We love the show Eureka that was on the Sci-Fi Network, and the other day there was and we're having our own little marathon because we have
Bought them all.
Bought them all.
Got to buy the last one though.
I know, we still need the last season. So there was that one episode where the main character.
I don't know what you call it. Colin Ferguson.
Yes.
Jack Carter.
Yes,
okay,
that person and Joe. But they had those contact lenses, right?
Oh, they're called pales, yes, and they were zapped in their eyes so they could see probabilities.
Right, and so they look at the situation and they read, and then there's the little percentage of what's going to be happening.
Mind you,
they kind of see what's going to happen, and so Scott, your husband,
yes,
who also watches the TV show with us, said, "Oh, that's really interesting. That's fascinating." And Brenda and I were like, welcome to our world, because Brenda's more fine-tuned into that, and I'm still getting, you're kind of getting my sea legs
now,
as far as that goes.
Veronica, seriously, I just said my daughter's name. But what's funny about Jen is that she has her barometer, which is the BS. What do you always say?
Oh yeah, I'm allergic to bullshit. No,
well, the other one, you can't BS a BSer.
You can't BS a BSer.
So her little chart goes up that, like, to remind you of the Terminator, where you could see that they had a screen and it had all of the words and percentages on it, and that's kind of like
yeah, D. Yeah, I am reading your bullshit right now because you cannot get that past me. Number one, I'm allergic to it. Number two, you can't get past me because I know how to BS.
I always talk to people about words. They're so important because the words are the vibrations that is necessary, because thoughts become things, and the law of attraction gives it to you. So I love the fact that she has said several times in my presence that I'm allergic to BS. Cancel. So now I'm glad that she has that frame of reference, because what do you really mean by that?
Okay, so I know that I've been looking at the issue of false promises. When people made those promises to me and then they didn't follow through on them. So then they would say something to me and I would just, yeah, right.
It's like blowing smoke up your ass, yeah?
Exactly. And
woo! Okay. So now I'm going to find out what those words, if they are connected. So say, I'm allergic to BS.
I'm allergic to BS.
Okay. So I am physically allergic.
I'm physically allergic to it.
Yes. And that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. And so if she's physically allergic to it and her body's now said, oh, I have to create a physical reaction to this because she's programmed me to do so, then is it sit into your skin? Oh, just a little bit, maybe a 1. Does it sit in her lung, thyroid, heart, liver, gallbladder? Where else, Jen? Stomach, pancreas, spleen, kidney, reproductive system. Ah, yes. The circulation, sex, the pericardium that protects the heart. So BS affects your heart. Yes. Does it affect your heart completely? No. So it affects the protective shield. It's like, oh my God, I can't let that BS get close to me.
Right, because number one, it was my mom was supposed to be there for me, yes, she was and provided amazing, great things.
Oh,
and
oh,
is a
she
wonderful
did.
person.
But also the statement is that she's supposed to be there. If you don't, I mean, if you really listen, want you to read a book by Byron Katie, Loving What Is, and she has another one too. But really it is looking at the idea is that no one really has to love you. We just have that concept that we have to be loved, which again is a form of separation to pull in. Didn't mean to interrupt, but go ahead, my dear.
So the idea that as far as the bonding goes with my mom, it wasn't complete. And so then she would say things about being there, or I'll be back, or that kind of thing, separation anxiety. And so all this false hope, all these false promises, I just got to the point where it's like, you're going to tell me all these things and you're going to feed me these lines, and I know that they're not true. And so I have to protect my heart, because I don't want you've already heard it, I don't want you to hurt it again.
Now, we're not blaming. What we're doing is we're showing you past life stuff. Our soul has been on this journey for so long, and the soul never dies. And so as it chose to dream by putting on this meat suit that she's wearing right now, then the unresolved issues have to come to the surface. So the time the consciousness takes place in a physical form, which means it takes all the elements and all of the sensory system and everything else, and when that occurs, then her soul says, hey, I'm going to present this to you. How are you going to react? And so it's like test time. You know, you freeze up on test. So it's test time. So all of a sudden it's like, will I bond with my mother? And all of a sudden, experience plays out. Oh, hell no. Oh, failed. Okay, she's got to work on that issue. Trusting. Oh, well, okay, we got to work on that one too. And so what happens is your soul is presenting all of the stuff from the past, all of the stuff in your soul that needs to be addressed, closed, working on more, whatever the issue may be. And if she didn't respond to it, so let's say she says, got to work on accepting friendships. Oh, she passed with flying colors. Okay, so what would happen is there would be an incident that would happen in front of her, and if she responded taking it personally or taking it negative, losing life force power, an emotional response, then yeah, she's failed. She needs more work to do. And we could heal that by creating a closure or looking to what else that she needs to learn, develop, or another avenue. Secondly, it is all of a sudden the incident would come up and she doesn't even notice it, doesn't even respond to it. Then guess what? She's passed! And we all do this. Every single one of us does it because this is what Earth School is about. It is meant to see what other things that we need to do. We asked, what if? So, you made a comment about bonding not complete. Now, I am a person that looks at gems, and I help you to explain those gems. Now, some people would say, oh yeah, bonding's not complete. But I'd like to know more about your perspective on that.
Okay, because of all the spiritual investigation, as we call it, that we've done, I know that we have uncovered that, number one, I did have a twin in the womb with me that did not come to full term. And that was around 2 to 3 months in the womb that it left. And actually, I was able to confirm some of that with my mom, which is cool that she's open to answering such questions. But the energy of that twin stayed present, stayed there, so that whatever you want to call it, soul energy or whatever it is.
The familiarity of how she described it in this consciousness. So as that soul left, it was already part of her experience, and then the part of the essence of that twin, because again, if she wouldn't even recognize the twin, folded time, or I should take the moment of how we take and observe that moment, we collapse time to create an experience. If she didn't, she wouldn't even know about the twin. So the residue of the twin, is it still there? Yes, it was, because we could check it. But at the same time, it's about that familiarity about the twin.
And then the remnant of it left when I was 6 months old, outside, after birth, 6 months old, that remnant left, and then I was supposed to then experience the planet by myself. And so that leaving, and I've talked to my mom about this, and she said, oh my gosh, that's right. She goes, I could almost remember that experience because all of a sudden I knew as a mom, you were not accepting my love. I had all this love to give you. You're my daughter. I love you. Brought you into being. And I saw that you could not take any of that love in.
And the mother tried. But when the soul has already made that decision, it doesn't matter exactly what you do or don't do, because there's always that lens now that this is the way I gotta see my mother. And at the time that we usually make those decisions is really we don't have the full capacity of the right brain, left brain. We just have that capacity of reacting and recalling those memories and how are we going to react to this lifetime. So it's so important to understand that the parts of us that don't get evolved is those stages of when that occurred. So when that moment of hell occurred, it threw her off her center, her self-talk's going to go nuts, her emotions are going to go crazy, then she's going to have to make a decision of how to cope with it. And if she doesn't know how to process it out, then it'll be, I can't even process this. Well, she may start sucking her thumb, or she may have wetting the bed. She may have go cry behind, tied by her mother's skirt. She'd become more shy. I mean, there's so many different things. Some people get violent. Some people yell. Some people don't know how to handle all of that stuff. Every behavior is usually played upon another behavior. But one of the things that we know is when we go back, we're looking for that decision of the time that consciousness made it. If there's a decision made, then it takes all that potential, the endless potential, and makes it very limited. And it's fine, it worked, but as she chronologically aged, that limitation now becomes, oh, wait a minute, it's now no longer works for her. It's now becoming a problem instead of being helping.
Right.
And so now she has to upgrade beyond that point. So as far as the bonding go, you normally create a bond. Usually little kids will automatically feel the essence. I think they even proved it, I can't remember now, how the mother will start making chemicals in her brain, in her own brain, in the child, and has their chemical set up, and somehow they bond in that nature. But like she was telling you, inside the womb is when she really started noticing relationship bonding. And it did create an interference. So, how did it look before we did the healing? How did it look? All of that particular stuff that happened, the twin left, the mother not able to bond, how does it affect you in your life? And let's say if we go back a year. How did it affect your life?
A year from today?
Yeah, a year ago.
A year ago. Gosh.
It's hard to remember because a lot of times we heal and resolve it so much that they're just memories, and so this looking for the memory usually is the one that has the hottest spark. So when you're trying to recall, if it doesn't have an emotional spark on it, it's almost hard to remember, so then you have to go to another part of your brain to access this.
Life for me was so different a year ago.
You were unable to bond with your husband.
Oh yeah, it was like, it literally was forcing a relationship. It was not effortless in any sense of the word.
Just like when, so we got to take the key word. How would you do this? So the key word is that she wasn't able to bond. So has your relationship with your mother bonded more now, ever since you did some healings?
Oh, yes. We're just, there's always going to be more to go, but as far as healing goes, but my
Much better than a year ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
What
about your sister?
That's been a roller coaster because there was a lot of improvement and then some stuff hit the fan over the summer. But I'm back to kind of where I was as far as my relationship with my sister goes, just not being connected.
But one of the major things is we had a wonderful friend named Tim Harris, and he said, oh, your heart. And what was his first thing that he noticed is that you're very protective, and those heart walls do come up. And he says, in order for you to have relationships,
I have a scar.
You got to heal that scar.
You have to heal that scar.
And that's what we were in the middle of doing. And so when certain things occur as a kid, they will leave imprints. Usually what you'll find is little hammer herds inside the brain, because the brain is what controls the body. But at the same time, on a physical or non-physical level, Tim and I both saw that we have to help her work on her heart to heal all of that damage that was there. And, so that's what we're doing. So we're going to take a break, and we'll come right back after this. Box that is on sepianc.com/radio. What you can do is use Internet Explorer, because what we've noticed that through other browsers it doesn't seem to be booting up correctly, but Internet Explorer seemed to work. Now we have told one guest and she was able to now get back into the chat room. We have noticed that some other people are unable to get into the chat room, so hopefully they can hear us and they will try that. Like I said, Internet Explorer seems to be working okay with the chat room. So we got talking about bonding and talking about
Healing my
healing
heart.
and healing her heart. So it's important to understand that as a spiritual teacher or spiritual leader, one of the things is that readings are okay because they help you get into that conscious contact, help you connect the dots. The spiritual teachings help you awaken in a way of putting different definitions to certain words, to be able to give you that conscious contact and give you a bridge to say, wait a minute, I don't really have to keep creating in this fashion. We have a history that says we keep repeating. You even look out into the world today and it's all about repeating. And the feminine energy is coming in, and that's about loving thyself. Throughout history, what we've noticed, it really seems to be affected that we weren't supposed to love ourselves, because that's considered shame if we did, and that was considered selfish if we did.
We're always supposed to love the other person first.
Yes. And what gets me is that usually they'll say, love thy neighbor as you love thyself. Well, guess what?
Most of the time, you have a shitty self-image.
Yeah, if you've got a crappy self-image, your self-esteem isn't good, and you just don't know how. You don't have the desire to love yourself because you are so focused on the emotion. The mystery of all of this is that we have an emotional body. We all have emotions, and so when some people say, well, I don't have emotions, that's because you are using the emotion of non-feeling to create a designated feeling and labeling it, or guess what? You had to be taught to not feel. Most of the men that come across my space have been told that they can't cry, they're not supposed to act a certain way, they're not supposed to express, but they're supposed to show how they're angry, and they're supposed to show how they fight, and it was like, whoa, let's find out the real you. On your blog, there was some particular phrase that you put up, and I also used it in one of my memes today on my page. And the phrase was that one right there. Say it, Jen.
Our deepest wishes are whispers of our authentic selves. We must learn to respect them. We must learn to listen. And that's by Sarah Ban Brethnock.
And what's important is that, why do I feel connected with that one? Because one of the major things is that we have to get back to our true identity. People are so over-identifying with their pain and their sufferings. And people say when they hear those words, no, I'm not. But their next breath they say, oh my God, my back hurts. Oh my God, I got gas.
Oh, work sucked today.
Yeah, and people are just so mean. I had saw this woman write about how she's in a lot of pain with her relationship, and I wanted so much to respond. I ended up taking in almost 2 pages worth of an answer to help her, because she's in the like minds that I am in. And then all of a sudden, Facebook couldn't post it. And it says, oh, try back later. So I tried back later, and I realized that it is what it is. I am not supposed to intervene because a fresh experience of pain. Well, even though, how do I put it, if you're talking to somebody about it, then they're like, you're blaming me! When you're in such that state, the stress that occurs, 80% of the blood that leaves your forebrain, it goes into your limbs, it is meant to go into fight, flight, flee. And if somebody is trying to help, just like if you go to funerals and you go up to the person that's crying and you're trying to comfort them and you're giving words of wisdom, they ain't going to make a lick of sense. They want to tell you to F off. Because really, they just want you to be there or go away. And if you're to be there, they want you to listen to their story because they have to do that mourning process.
Right. Well, they're experiencing a wound. In that moment when they're experiencing that loss, they're still in a wound, and it's like if you were having like this gaping, seeping, bloody injury, and you're sitting there talking about, okay, so if you do this and the blood represents this and this, they're like, no, just put a Band-Aid on it, put a bandage on it right now.
Because they already have the answer.
That's what I want right now. But then, if they're open to it, they'll come back, okay, my wound healed a little bit. Okay, so now I know you're this healing person, so what did this mean? They needed that time to go through that mourning and kind of just band-aid it at the moment to help them.
And that's important because that little mourning process brings the blood back up to the forebrain so that you can start thinking your way out of a paper bag. But when it all is in shock and all of that's happening, you are meant to go in that simple phase of fight, flight, flee. And so people sometimes are in their irrational part of their mind. They go irrational. They can't help it. Oh, say Kimberly made it. Yay, she heard me. All right.
Yay!
So when you think about how you are, be patient. So what I watched and witnessed this woman was talking about how it's his fault. Now before we go into that, they're telling me that I need to pay attention to the fact, did we just have our break? Did we do it correctly? Did we do the top of the hour? Yeah, we did it correctly.
And we did one at 6:20.
You know what? I felt like we didn't. It's his fault. So I want you to contemplate on that. It's his fault. It's their fault. Before we go into that answer, we were talking about the authenticity. Okay? When I grew up, when I was doing things, just as a child, like for instance, if you watch The Shadow Effect, or there's a movie and there's a book, and Debbie E. Ford has got participating in that, is that we end up putting on masks. We end up taking, and like for instance, she was talking about how the mother or grandmother, I'm not sure who it is, and there's a plate of a bunch of cookies. And so the lady leaves the room and the child goes, oh, awesome! And so then she, being cute and loving, took all the cookies and put them on her plate. And then the mother came back in the room and pretty much shamed her into, wow, you're going to be a little pig, aren't you? You need to learn to share. That's selfish. And the little girl that was tee-hee-heen, probably not going to keep the cookies, or maybe she wanted them, was to be shamed. So then she put on the mask that she can't show her authentic self of her, maybe her funny side, or her desire, or any of that. And when that occurs, you end up losing bits and pieces, because then you have to become the identity that other people tell you that you have to do. Guilt and shame is the number 2 things, and that is guilt and shame affected by the central and the governing meridian. It is the egg that protects you, and when it is chipped away and there is no protection, you become what others want you to become without realizing. You morph, you lose yourself, you correct yourself, you try to do everything that is, oh, I'm supposed to be civil, I'm supposed to be social, I'm supposed to be this way. And before you know it, you lose those parts. Then you have the rebels that break free from it, but yet they still have those same masks on. And we are just our wounds walking around. Part of what I do to help people is literally, we heal those wounds. We create those closures. We rip off the mask in a way that is not scary, and you don't have to worry about having safety blankets because we're recreating a foundation. Try to put in a walls and an attic roof on if you have no foundation. I mean, if there's nothing to be able to hold it together. But if your foundation is all rotted away, you're still going to have problems when you put the new walls up. And the new walls usually are, I'm positive thinking, and I'm using the law of attraction, and I'm stating my happiness and my joy, and I'm going to ignore what you say today because you're not affecting me, and I'm putting on the Band-Aid. And then the addict is going into that spirituality, waking up, and it's like a monk meditating and really got all that down pat, but couldn't apply it to the mental and emotional world. So physically, when he'd show up, and after his meditation, he could be a real dick. He could be really mean. He'd be like, hey, I'm boss, I'm the one in charge, screw you, I know more than you. So when you put on that addict, it's about having that spiritual transformation of life, of having a healthier life. And one of the things that we do as soul coaches is help you understand, why does your soul project that? Why did it project that particular hell? And once we help you understand and connect the dots, the biggest thing that me and Jenna found is that when we start to resolve and create closure to these specific hells that said we have to behave a certain way, act to be, this, do that, what we did was that we carved and chiseled away our authenticness, and we were afraid to tell people that we like this or like that, or we want to do this or we want to do that, because what are the reactions, their responses that these people give us? And
well, because I was thinking about the whole liking science fiction and that kind of thing, that was my sister's realm, and I could have nothing to do with it. I couldn't even make a peep about it because that was hers. She knew it. She read everything. She watched the movies. This is who I am. And how dare you enter in to my world? And so
you have to know one thing about her sister is that if you watched
the Big Bang Theory,
Sheldon, where everybody is wrong and they're the only one that's right, and how smart they are,
and the arrogance,
and that's what she had to live with. There was no breathing room for Jen to even exist in that space.
right? And so now it's like, oh, well, the fact that I'm in this realm at all, the closest thing that makes sense to it is science fiction. That's a natural bridge for people to come into our world, is through the world of science fiction. And now it's like this whole other world has opened up to me. And yeah, it may be late in life, but it feels like, I can breathe and I'm not going to be chastised for exploring different avenues.
The one thing about Sheldon was that he got picked on. But in this case, her sister became the bully. And being that it's anti-bullying month, one of the things that I've been helping Jen with is that your soul is projecting out you to have bullies. Well, how about if we take that inner world and take that program and actually resolve it? Create closure to it. Be done with it. And when that happened, things started to happen better for her because you actually start to see evidence, correct?
Yes.
Because immediately your sister was being nice to you and you hadn't had any interaction and you're like, what? But she learned that she doesn't have to put her hand back in the fire. It reminds me of the woman that tried to steal my kids. And there was all of this stuff that I had to put up for 6 years of my life with her. And finally I said, that's it, I'm done. And I had to heal the resentment. I had to heal and, what do they call it, forgiveness. And I forgave and I forgot. I didn't choose to forget and deny. I chose to disengage the emotions and stuff like this. Which that next time I saw her, it was, oh my God. I noticed I wasn't scared. There was no self-talk. I wasn't feeling like I had a high.
The intimidation factor was gone.
All that was gone. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm completely free of this. And I actually got to see her being frightened of me. And that's not my agenda, but I was free of it. When you forgive and you say you don't forget, well, you don't have to put your hand in the back of the fire. Do take the positive learnings, but do learn to heal how the emotions and how I'll never forget, because that's just the same as if you were taking poison and hoping the other person would die. It's just like resentment. It's just like those things, because it sits there and eats away at you, because you have to take your life force and keep it alive. We want closure. We want resolution. We want you to succeed in your life. We want you to move forward in your life. So, how do we really define ourselves? Well, you have to be careful out in this world because it is so picky of crossing the lines, being afraid, doing this, doing that. Because if you say that you're a healer, then you have to be careful of not using XYZ words because they can use them out of context and hurt you. There's always like big brother, big business. Something has got to condemn you. But again, if you heal those cords of projecting out of why they would want to do this to you, then you can stop it from affecting you. People, you got to have the experience to understand. I used to have Christian folk come up to me and, well, if you do all this, where's God in it? I'm like, oh my God, why am I creating this to always happen? And then I would have people come up to me and say, those words, you're just being, and they were nasty, they're harassing, they were the skeptics, and I thought, really, I am attracting it. The law of attraction says that I must be putting something out to get it back. So like attracts like. What the hell? Where is it? And it usually is found in my belief system that I don't like them. That'll attract people in to prove that I don't like them. I believe people, on the belief, I believe people are mean to me. Well, then now I have to bring, with the law of attraction, I have to bring those people that don't like me and are mean to me. So if you change that program that's inside of you, which is the emotions of fueling it to keep it alive, which is based on an experience that made you come up with that decision and turned into a belief, literally resolve it. And it's so important to understand this. And what we'll probably do after the break is hopefully I'll find this little book and I can read this little part to you, because this part I'm somehow going to put it in my dissertation. I am so close to being done. I'm ready to be done. But anyway, what else do you have to say about that, Jen, before we take a break?
Just the idea of creating closure. If I were to, some people think that this is just magic thinking and that I'm in denial. Though, my core group knows otherwise, but like all of a sudden now but they know that something's different, so they may have at one point thought that, oh, this is just magic thinking, la 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 la. But they actually genuinely see a difference in how I'm taking responsibility. Okay, my marriage wasn't working. I had to take responsibility for that. I healed and created closure, and now that's different, and now other avenues are opening, and they're actually, okay, wait a minute, there is something genuine and authentic and grounded in the work that I'm doing.
Right.
And that's the difference.
And so what we're going to do is hopefully I can find that book, and then we're also going to go and talk about It's His Fault. But hopefully I will find that book.
Okay.
I'll be back after this.
Great.
At least expect it.
Okay, this is what you needed to read. You sent it to me so you could read on my iPad.
Yes, because I need to see it.
I understand what's happening. Okay. Is that big enough?
Yes, and before I get to that, I wanted to talk about,
awesome.
The book I'm going to be talking about is The Emotion Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson, which is very important to understand. Quantum physics has a lot to do with who we are as human beings. And what I want you to understand is, why does sickness occur? What's going on? Our immune system is always eavesdropping at every moment. This is called Remembering the Kamikazes. This inexplicable phenomenon is not restricted to the behavior or individual subatomic particles. And subatomic particles remind you of building blocks, like Legos, building on top of one another. This strange connectedness has been shown to occur in the cells in the human body. In one well-known study, white blood cells were taken from a subject and placed in a petri dish. White blood cells are responsible for seeking out and destroying foreign bacteria, toxins, and other invaders. The subject was hooked up to electrodes to measure the electrical activity of the body. His white blood cells were also placed in a highly sensitive device that was able to measure their electrical activity. Exact measurements were taken of the electrical activity level of both the patient and his white blood cells. One of the men in the studies had served in the Navy during World War II on the aircraft carrier stationed in the Pacific. While he was there, Japanese kamikaze suicide pilots had attacked. The man was terrified, and more than once he was sure he was going to die. After he hooked up to the electrodes, he was shown newsreel footage of kamikaze pilots diving and attacking aircraft carriers during the war. While it was long ago, his body had not forgotten it. The sudden acute anxiety that he felt showed immediately on the readout from the electrodes on his body. This comes as no real surprise, but the researchers were amazed to see that his white blood cells on the other side of the room showed exactly the same burst of a reading out. Both readouts were essentially identical. The electrical currents of the white cells were suddenly just as erratic as the currents in the body. They turned off the projector, and the electrical activity in both the man and the white blood cells on the room returned to normal. The scientists could hardly believe it. They repeated the test a number of times with similar results each time, just to see what would happen. The test, was repeated again, but the distance between the patient and his white blood cells was increased. In fact, the measuring device contained the still living white blood cells was driven to another laboratory a number of miles away, and the test repeated. Same outcome. It says the results of this test went against everything these scientists had been taught. Ask anyone whether a man who gets upset watching a movie can make his blood cells act up miles, especially many miles away, and yes, you will probably be laughed at. It sounds impossible, yet it really happened. What am I pointing out is that your body holds a remembrance, and I call them markers. And when those markers are remembered, your body goes back into the same state that you reacted the very first time when you couldn't process this. So what I'm curious about, and I really wish I could do the Petri dish thing, was to take those moments and be able to do the healing and help that white blood cells, help the immune system, help the replication of the holographic memory to resolve. And your body reacts this way based on your memory. based on your brain. And you have to remember that when they used to take electrodes and cut open the brain and test it, one of the things that they did was they found out that they touched certain parts, that person would remember right down to the smell, to everything that was going on. It was so important because they're like, oh my gosh, it's as if I'm reliving it right now. It was, the memory was so active and so strong, as if it was a deja vu. It had happened. Oh my gosh. Okay, so you really get that fresh experience. And so what we do is we help you get those fresh experiences because you have them every single day of your life. And if you can understand that fresh experience is linked back to that moment in time when it was first created, even all the way back to the past life, you will allow yourself to be able to heal. And that's where the healing tools come in. That's where it's important. And someone could barely hear me? Darn.
As you were reading.
Dang, you should have said speak up.
Well, I was fixing the microphone. I caught it right at the end of your reading.
Well, if you didn't hear my story, you can listen on YouTube because it should be more clear. And when, hopefully, it'll work. Now, what we're going to do, since we only have like 10 minutes left, or I should say 9 minutes left, I want to talk about... So
read loud if you're going to read.
Yeah, or you can read this.
Okay, I can read that.
Now, again, this was somebody... I'm only going to take bits and pieces of it because this is just something that's out there. It's not my fault. It's his fault. I guess I'll read. It's not me. I started a normal conversation about something that we were perfectly able to discuss last night, even with humor and positive attitude towards a solution. Then today, when I try to continue the conversation, I am shut down and told all kinds of crazy crap about how I do not care about him or his efforts. And again, the litany of the million things I do not do, I tell him I did not know the rules and changed about being able to discuss the matter. The last night seemed fine, and one told me today that we were different. All of these things. So going on, it's this story about how all of a sudden, what the hell just happened? Why is this happening? And she's so determined that it's not her fault. And here it is. You're right. In the cause-effect equation, in this case, it's his stuff that came to the surface. He had all night to think about the situation. Even if he wasn't consciously participating, the 41 thoughts he has per minute, all the other programs that are active and going on, just like behind the scenes when you run a computer, you don't know all the programs that are running, they have to take place. So he's probably, my comfort zone is being compromised. I feel like some emotion. Now, when you have an emotional, what do you call it, and you take it personal, you build up on it. Like, for instance, if you didn't know you had to work the next day and you were called at the last minute, you wouldn't think twice. You would say, okay, fine. And you get dressed, you go, you're done. You didn't have time to think about it. You didn't have time to talk yourself out of it. You didn't have time to go into a story, the familiarity, and all of these little things that causes a strategy to cause you to react in a certain way. And there is a pattern. Now, his crap is coming to the surface. You were supposed to trigger him to go into that crap. He has his own stuff, his soul projected out to create this moment. Now, you've got to understand, these two people come together and created a moment. Okay? His crap's going to come to the surface. Her crap's going to come to the surface. But what's in between them is a lens. He can't show up to her any other way than she lets him, and vice versa. It's so important to understand that lenses, mask, stories, the protection, all of this is going to block you from being in sync with the other person. And if an issue flares up, it's like a hemorrhoid. It's going to flare up, and it's going to be uncomfortable, it'll hurt, and sometimes you don't even know it's coming. It'll just hit you like a ton of bricks. Now, as far as, what else did I say? He had time to go into semantics, think about what caught him off guard when you did speak, what emotional stuff that came up, and it's all the stuff that he was unable to process. And his soul is saying, here, could you process it now? Can you process it now? And you're like, hell no, I couldn't process it the first time. Or you've learned that time will take care of it. Well, time's shown that you really don't take care of things. I went a little further and I said, what is your stuff is how it is a familiar story. It's how you know it. And that's what my dissertation's all about, is how you know it. I feel like I need to put my dissertation bits by bits on my blog so that you can share this with me. It says, how you knew it fuels your future. What do I mean by that, Jen? How you knew it fuels your future.
Because this is so familiar. It's just so entangled into who you are. You don't even, and subtle, you don't even know you're doing it, but you know it. Like, I know that the sky is blue. I know that there's going to be a floor outside my room when I open up the door to go down the hallway. I know that that floor is going to be there. It's that knowing. I know that so-and-so acts this way, behaves this way, will say, I can predict that they're going to say this to me. And that prediction is that fuel that feeds the relationship, so you know how to interact, so that you know what you're supposed to be. The script is already written to some degree.
Yes, it is. The script is written because it's part of that program. So a little further, what else did I say? This is why we can only show up to you no other way, or he can only show up to you no other way than you know your reality. How you know your reality. That is, the frontal lobe. In the frontal lobe is what creates reality. It's your thoughts that are in the frontal lobe. It is your stories. It is your history that creates your reality. You have foundation. You have all of that history of genetic and the encodings, which are very important because people don't realize. They know what genetics means, but they don't understand what encodings mean. But they all play a part in exactly what it is that's going on with you. You just disrupt the program and create closure to that pattern. Disrupting the program. So, let's say that Jen is blah, 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 blah. Well, for an example, we were putting a shelf together, and I think it was probably one of these shelves that we were putting together.
Right, when this store was going to be opened.
And so she's working on the bottom stuff, I'm working on the top stuff, I'm screwing things in, she's screwing things in, and so she's directly below me, and we're working as a team, and I put the hand drill, the heavy hand drill, on top of the shelf, and then all of a sudden she pulled on something, the thing come like this, there was no time for me to catch it, and where did it hit you, do you remember?
No, the drill hit me like on top of my head.
And it left a mark though, somewhere on your face.
Yeah, it was somewhere in this area.
Yeah, and so instantly she could feel the pain, and you go into that shock, and how are you supposed to process it? Now, what will happen is you will create a rush of fight, flight, freeze chemical peptides that will cause you to react in, oh, that's pain. But what did I do next, Jen, from your point of view?
You started doing EFT on it, and just with that pain, just the pain of what was happening. You were doing EFT, and it was like all of a sudden, okay, wait a minute. And normally I'm supposed to have this pain going on, but it wasn't there. Then you had to say, well, now your little girl inside of you wants to go, wah!
Wait a minute, I think you took away my ability to cry. I needed to cry. I says, okay, should we heal that out? And she said yes, so we tapped some more. And remarkable is that she had just a little mark, nothing big, and it didn't last very long. So are you glad I did it, Jen?
Yes.
Yeah, because the pain could have lingered for longer times, and there's no reason for her to even develop any sickness or disease or anything from that moment. So literally causing her white blood cells, like in a petri dish, to calm down and say, I don't have to react that way. I don't have to. I process it out. So a little bit further, help me keep the eye on the time there, Jen.
Yep.
So I tell people we preserve all the learning so that you don't have to repeat and then learn a new way, okay? So you need to learn that new way. The evolution of your soul is fascinating. It wants to learn, to evolve. It wants to get out of the baby stage. It wants to go from the student to the teacher. It wants to grow up. And so your soul's progression is to help get you, the physical part of you, involved so that it can mature. It's not just the maturity of who you exist as.
Be mature!
Really? What is this? Is your unconscious soul program that projects people to show up to you in a certain way. The attraction factor from you send out a signal of loss and suffering. Why? Because your soul encountered it before and is now asking you, can you process now? And then if you say no, then that fresh experience can snowball into more of a hellish state. Because again, there's only two really states, and it's the heaven state and the hell state. And if you are defining the moment emotionally, then it will affect you. One of the things before I close, and I don't want to read anymore, was that somebody said, well, what happens if I do all this, I become an emotional being, motionless being? That's not true. It is totally not true, because you forgot who you were. And your subconscious mind is going, I want you to remember that. You are joy, you are love, you are peace. And we have healed so many of our hells that the natural process, that there is no effort, joy just returns to that caudate nucleus. You literally become happy. And you're whistling and doing things.
And I'm experiencing emotions that probably were always there. I just didn't know how to experience joy. I didn't know.
Right.
When I was just beaming one day, and you're like, what's going on? I said, I think I'm happy. And you're like, from what? I said, it's intrinsic. I'm actually feeling happy from the inside out. Wait a minute. What's going on?
And then you can also feel happy from the inside out, because we have a contest, and it is on our pages and stuff like this, and it's called Win-Win.